Hi, it's Ed here once again from Wise Up. Today we're going to be looking at presenting. Now, a lot of us will have to do this at some point, whether that's at school or at uni or at work. Can be a bit daunting. I think there's only one real bit of advice is you've got to get out there and do it. You can prepare for as long as you like, and the more preparation you put in, the better. But at the end of the day, it's only practice that makes perfect. When you've done your first 5 or 6 presentations, you'll start to relax into it and your presentations will improve. But everybody goes through the nerves before the first one, so don't worry. Everyone knows that that's going to happen, and people do make allowances. So let's sort of take you through it bit by bit. So beforehand, this is going to sound really obvious, but know what your subject is. What are you going to be talking about? And stick to the point. So don't get sort of dragged off course unless your presentation style is sort of random and scattergun. I mean, there's certainly people like that can be very effective, but I think to start with, have a very clear idea of what you want to talk about and don't be sidetracked off of it. Know exactly what you're going to say. And by that, it means that you would have perhaps scripted it. You certainly don't want to learn it off by heart because I think that will come across very stilted. But have a very clear idea of what you're going to say and what the purpose of that is. And then I think really important, know who you're going to be talking to. If you're going to be talking to a young audience, they're going to have a short attention span. You want to keep your presentation really short and quite snappy. Generally, the smaller the size of the audience, the longer you can get away with on a presentation when you're talking to adults anyway. If you're talking to a great big group of maybe a couple of hundred people, then to do a 2-hour presentation is going to be very draining for them and you. And also the experience that they've got. Will they understand the subject matter, or will it be too simple for them, or will it be too complicated? Really know the level at which you need to be talking to. And if you're talking to an inexperienced audience, please don't talk down to them and patronise them. Talk to them as equals, and that goes with kids as well. Get them on side by being somebody they can relate to rather than somebody who's just going to be on a pedestal in front of them. And as I said just now, really and truly, don't worry if you're nervous. We all are. And it doesn't matter how many times you do it, you still get a few butterflies just before you go out. So what about your preparation? Well, I think there's one thing to remember there. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. I think that's really worthwhile knowing. So the more preparation you can put in, the better. So preparation will be divided into 2 bits. It will be planning what you're going to be doing and what you're going to be using, and then practicing how you're going to be using it. If you do prepare well, then I'll guarantee that you'll feel a lot less nervous than you would do if you were trying to wing it, and you'll make next to no mistakes at all, because all of your mistakes would have been left in the practice area in front of people that really didn't matter if there were anybody there at all. Going back to our very first point, be very clear on what your aims are. So as long as you know what your aims are and you prepare, you don't get sidetracked, you should be in a really good place. So by your aims, are you looking to inform people, tell them what's going on? Are you looking to inspire people? So look what can be done if you follow this route. Are you looking to entertain people? I wouldn't suggest trying to be a comedian because it's a very talented skill that very few people have got. So I think we want to steer clear away from joke telling. Or are you going to be demonstrating something, showing people how certain things are going to be done? Or are you going to try and persuade them to come across to your way of thinking, that a certain way of doing things might be better? So I think those are your aims. You can certainly not just worry about doing one of those things. You might be looking at 2 or even 3 of those things at different stages through your presentation. And just because you're going to try and demonstrate something, it doesn't mean to say that's got to take up the entire presentation. That can just be a short portion of it as well. Right, so you know what you're going to do, you know what your aims are, so now you need to find out what the information is that you're going to impart. So what are your sources? Where are you going to go to find out all of this information? Probably the first port of call for most of us will be nowadays the internet. But don't take for granted everything you read on the internet is going to be true. you need to verify facts if you're going to be using them, or if you're going to be using some sort of argument on the internet through statistics or something like that. Just make sure that you back that up somewhere along the line as well. Books is the old-fashioned way. It's still a very good way because most of the stuff that you're going to read in books will have been peer-read. So in other words, somebody else would have checked those facts out for you. So generally it's going to be a lot more reliable than the internet. Then you could actually ask people. You could go and interview people that have been there, seen it and done it. People whose point of view is very valid when you're trying to put something else across. And then don't forget your own experience. So think about what you've done and how that might influence your talk. Right, so you know what you're going to be talking about. You know your sources, you know your aims. Now we start to put something together. And I will call this, and the way I like to think about this is a 2D script. So something that we're just going to be writing down in words. And there's lots of different ways to do this, but this is just one idea, and it's the way I tend to use. So I get a great big piece of paper or a whiteboard, a piece of A3 paper. I might get lots of different post-it notes or different coloured pens or something like that. And then I just write anything down, absolutely anything. I try and colour coordinate what I can within certain topics, or I might use one colour post-it note. Great thing about post-it notes is you can move them around on the piece of paper, or you can move them around on the board. So that's really, really quite a good idea. But if you just write stuff down, put stuff down anywhere, and then just link the things up with lines. And it's at this stage, if you write everything down in black, you could then take your coloured markers and mark in your topics so that you're pulling certain things together from that complete brainstorming. By brainstorming, it's anything, absolutely anything that you think is relevant or even slightly relevant. It might be a little story, it might be an anecdote, it might be a fact, it might be just some piece of data. It could be anything at all. You never know. You might not use it, but it's good to have it there just in case. Once you've started getting everything linked together, then you can go to the next stage, which is linking everything around and arranging it in subject matter and then into some sort of a logical format. Looking at that slide that I've just put up there, the thing at the very top might be the overall subject you're going to be talking about, and then your aims might be the second bit down. Are you going to demonstrate something? Are you going to try and persuade somebody about something? And then the third line down there where we've got the small discs at the bottom, they will be your arguments or the certain things you're going to be doing. So it sort of progresses through quite nicely. So you end up with a 2D script. On there, you don't need to have any slides, props, or presentation techniques at all. Just write the words down, just the stuff that you're going to be talking about. And then when you start to bring everything together into some sort of logical format, make sure that it's very, very well marked out. What's the beginning? So that might be your introduction. Who are you? What are you going to be talking about? Then the middle, which is going to be the main body of your presentation. So that can be broken down as well into different sections. And then an end, which would be generally a summary about everything that you've done. And obviously always allow times for questions at the end. You could even start your presentation by saying, I'm going to give you 5 minutes at the end for questions. But personally, I like to have questions all the way through. It makes it more of a two-way dialogue rather than just one person talking to a whole group of people. And then still without any slides or without anything else, just have a little rough run through. Give it a fair idea of what you're going to be doing. Just practice it through. No need to go into too much detail, but it gives you an idea of how it might flow. Right, then you start to bring in your slides or whatever else you're going to be using and turning it into a 3D script. So now we've got the words, we start to put things in that is going to bring it to life. And there's lots of different things that you can use. You don't just have to think about slides, but you can be using case studies from people or different stories and anecdotes. Examples of things, quotes, statistics, props, questions and acronyms. So all of those things can be used to bring your story to life. And then breaking it down into small sections. Don't expect people to be able to listen all the way through. So go off into a little anecdote between the sections with perhaps a little amusing story, or you could just talk to the audience about something that might have cropped up, just to split the whole thing down. Once you've got everything in as you want it, you need to now start to practice the whole thing with your slides, with your props, with your different acronyms, whatever you might be using. You need to bring all of that in, and you don't need an audience. You just need you, and you need a stopwatch. Get an idea of the timing on there and stand up when you're doing it, because you can then use your body language. You start to move around the room a little bit as well. Now, this whole thing about timing, have a fair idea of what your presentation should take. So you may have been given 20 minutes to do your presentation. If you're given 20 minutes, do not expect when you practice to get that to 20 minutes. It needs to be shorter, because when you get up in front of an audience, time will fly and your presentation will actually expand. So it's a really good idea to try and get this down for a 20-minute presentation, get it down to 15 minutes. You can always fill, but it's very difficult to chop. So once you get towards the end of your presentation, have little bits where you can actually work your way out of the presentation. Perhaps I'm not explaining that very well, but from sort of 12 minutes onwards, have every couple of minutes a point where you could stop the presentation if you needed to. So if the clock has moved forward and you've run out of time, have places where it makes sense to move out. So when you're happy with how everything's going, get somebody in to watch, get a couple of friends and ask them to criticize. You don't have to change anything. It's not going to be personal, but accept the criticism that's given and then just refine the presentation if you think that that criticism is valid. And if it is, try and make it better for the next time. Right, now I want to have a quick chat about slides, because most of us will use slides. I think if there's one rule, keep your slides to a minimum. We don't want to kill people by PowerPoint. We want them to be engaged. We want to be engaging. We want to make it as fun and as light as possible. So keep your fonts to a minimum as well. All these lovely fonts that are out on the market, they do look good, but when you start putting too many of them together, then it just starts getting confused and cluttered. Equally, your slide doesn't need to tell everything. So we don't want loads and loads of text on one slide, which people are probably going to read. Much better to have a couple of key bullet points on there and then tell them about it. That's what you're there for. Yours is the presentation. You shouldn't be asking them to read the whole slide, because that just defeats the object of it. So what could you reasonably use? Well, pictures are worth 1,000 words is what they say. I think as many pictures as you can get in is always going to be good. If you're talking to kids, maybe bring some cartoons in. That's always pretty popular. I personally would steer clear of sounds. I think the sort of, especially the cartoon sounds, or the anvil being dropped or something like that you might see on Tom and Jerry, doesn't really enhance your presentation very much. I personally like using bullet points where you can put a couple of words there, and bringing in colour as well just gives everything a slightly more lively feel to it. Right, so you've prepared, you've been through it, you've had your criticism, you've amended it slightly, you're ready to rock and roll. So it's come to the time of delivery. Because of all of that preparation you've put in, go out there and enjoy it. Relax. You've put in all the hard work. Now's the time to just go out and try and perform. Once you get in front of the audience, tell them who you are, smile, make eye contact, try and talk to them as though they are a friend, because the more that you can get them on side, the more enjoyable the whole process is going to be, and invite them to talk back to you. Try to make an impact in the first 10 or 15 seconds. That might be just a warm story. It doesn't need to be funny. I know I put a funny quote on there, but not a joke. It's a skill to tell a joke well. Don't fall flat on your face by trying to do that. It might just be how you got there on the day, why your setup took longer than normal. It might be where you bought your coffee. It could be anything at all, just something to break the ice. Now, unfortunately, not everybody will be blessed with great manners, and unfortunately, you can't stop people talking whilst you're trying to present. Everyone will have their own technique for getting out of that, but don't get flustered. You're doing nothing wrong. It's them that are not really adhering to the rules. Personally, I just stop and wait for them to finish, look at them. They won't do it again because all eyes will turn around on them and you will make them feel quite small. So I don't think you need to comment. You just stop your delivery, wait for them to stop and then restart. If you're inviting questions all the way through or at the end, be honest. If you can't answer a question, say so. I've not got that information. I'm really apologise. But if you see me afterwards, leave me your email address. I'll get back to you with the answer on that. So that you're not really trying to skirt around something. You're facing something head on. Much better to say that you don't know what the answer is rather than trying to make something up and then perhaps be proved wrong. And then know what you do well. Perhaps that's not so useful for the time you're doing it, but for next time, if you know what you're doing really well, then emphasise it, because people are going to remember the bits that you do well. And if we can leave away the bits that we don't do so well, then it's going to turn into a very successful presentation. So what makes it successful? Well, think about the people that are really, really good presenters. And I've put somebody on here that I think just makes everything look so natural. Somebody like Claire Balding, very relaxed, very enthusiastic, because generally she's actually researched the subject. She's got some sort of opinion on things. But her style is such that she's got a very good manner with people and she comes across very, very relaxed. So that's how to sort of model yourself on somebody, if you like. But the normal basics, for goodness sake, turn off your mobile phone. Never a good thing to have that in there. Don't walk around with things in your pockets because keys will jangle, especially if you're mic'd up as well, and it will be heard. So I tend to leave everything in my jacket pocket and I hang my jacket up. Then I can walk around with a full knowledge. The only thing in my pocket is perhaps my clicker for my slides. Speak to the audience. Try and have a monitor in front of you that will show what is going on behind you, so you don't have to keep turning around. That won't always be possible, and I understand that. But have a fair idea of what's coming up, because at the end of the day, you have practiced this, so you'll have a reasonably good idea of what your slides are going to look like or what your props will be doing or anything like that, so that you can speak to the audience and not the screen. And then you won't be sort of pulled into this awful mistake of just reading off of the slide, which is pointless. It doesn't add anything to your presentation. In fact, it actually takes away from it, because if there's enough stuff on the slide to read, then it needs to be just a few words. It doesn't need to be any more than that. And then your voice is your weapon. So vary the pitch and tone of your voice to try and make it as interesting as possible. Speed up and slow down your delivery. Use your hands, move around the stage to a certain extent, and try and keep everything as interesting as possible. One thing I like to do when I've got a small audience is that I get them, especially if they're younger people, I get them to do a little name plaque or something like that. Which will sit in front of them. You can do this with groups of up to about 20 people. The great thing then is when they ask a question, you can say, yes, Janice, yes, Brian. You can actually use that first name, and that breaks down this sort of invisible wall between you and the audience. And it brings everybody much closer, and it really helps, I think, to make your presentation go along much better. Now, I mentioned earlier on about moving around. Just be a little bit wary. By all means move, but don't stand in front of the screen. Nowadays it's very easy because to do that, because it used to be that you had a projector which would be flashing straight into your eyes, so you were very aware that you were standing in front of the screen. Nowadays projectors are normally overhead and they sit very close to the wall, so it's very difficult to know when you are in eye shot of somebody. And remember, it won't be everybody that is going to be sitting slap bang in front of the screen. People will be sitting to the side as well. So it will be difficult not to block, but if you keep moving around, then everybody's going to get a fair share of seeing the screen without any interruptions. Arrive somewhere, I always reckon about 45 minutes before you're due to go on. That gives you plenty of time to set up, check to see if all of your AV stuff's working. Personally, now I always take my own projector around with me. I always take my own power supply around with me. I even used to take my own screen around with me. You never know when things are going to be not working. I think it's always good, if you're going to be going somewhere else, to take maybe a 5 or 6 way adapter for power, because you might need one for your laptop, you might need one for a projector, you might need one for speakers or something like that, whatever it's going to be. and then check to make sure everything works. Shouldn't really take you longer than 15 minutes. Then use the next 30 minutes for a coffee. But it might be that you have a small problem. Then that gives you plenty of time to get that ironed out. The last thing you want is 5 minutes before your audience is due to turn up. You still haven't got stuff working, because you're going to make a dreadful first impression. Trust me, I've done it myself. And once you've tested all of your stuff, then you're going to be ready to absolutely kill it. So good luck with that. Right, just before I go, I'm just going to tell you what people will remember when they listen to somebody speak. Presentations will generally take, as I say, about 20% longer to finish than you think. 10% of what they read will be what people remember. They'll remember 20% of what they hear. They'll remember 30% of what they see. So pictures are always good. They'll remember 50% of what they hear and see. So if you're talking and the picture's going, brilliant. 70% of what they say, if we can get this first name going and the audience is talking, brilliant. 90% of what they say and do. So if you can make it interactive as well, you've cracked it. Good luck with it. Don't forget, practice makes perfect. Hope you found that useful. Do go on and try the Kahoot quiz that we've left on the website as well, just on presenting, which is a bit of fun just to see what you remembered. If you've come to this through YouTube, then go onto our website, wiseupfinancialeducation.co.uk. Follow us around on Twitter, and good presenting. See you next time. Bye.